Brothers and sisters, it's an honor to be here today on behalf of the 400,000 healthcare workers of 1199 SEIU, but also is the Hotel Trade Council in the house. 32BJ in the house. TWU in the house. Is the RWDSU in the house? Are the New York State Nurses Association in the house? Nurses. Is 1199 in the house? Is the labor movement in the house? Well, before we get started, there are a few special guests that I would like to acknowledge. Please join me in a warm welcome. They ask that you put your signs down in the front. Let's welcome our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul. Members of the state legislature, led by my Assemblyman Speaker, Carl Hastie. Members of the New York City Council. Okay. Our brothers and sisters in the labor movement, led by New York State AFL-CIO President Mario Cilento. And the New York Central Labor Council President Vinny Alvarez. Some of you may know that my mother was a home care worker. She worked long hours for very little pay, but she was devoted to the patients she cared for. She was an inspiration to me and my family. As a matter of fact, I don't remember any holidays going home to see my mother that my mother wouldn't ask me or one of my siblings to take her to the person whom she was taking care of at that time to bring them dinner, to make sure that they had family as a part of the holiday. She didn't have to do that, but she was obligated to do that. That's what home care workers do. Today, 1199 represents 80,000 home care workers who work tirelessly every day to provide care for New Yorkers so that they can stay in their homes with dignity. They do the Lord's work, and they deserve to make enough to support their families. Our union is proud to be a part of a fight for fairness for home care workers and all low-wage workers. It is a movement that is growing, and here in New York, the birthplace of the labor movement, we are really leading the way. Today, we bear witness to a profound moment in our state's history. Thanks to the hard work of many of you that are in this room and the brave fast food workers who stood up and demanded justice. The minimum wage for fast food workers will now move towards $15 an hour. Let's be clear. None of this could have happened without the leadership of our governor, Andrew Cuomo. Today, Governor Cuomo will make an exciting announcement for all working people in our state. So maybe you need to hear that again. or maybe it's just a shock that finally someone is standing up for working people. I said today, Governor Cuomo will make an exciting announcement for all working people in this state. The reality is that their better life for all working people will not happen unless all of us join together and fight to make this dream a reality. That's right. The fight for fair pay is stronger than ever in New York, and we're not going to stop until all workers are paid fairly and justly for the work that they do. And we must start that fight right here, right now. So, to honor our governor and another governor by the same name, who was also a champion for social justice, I want to propose that we call this campaign the Mario Cuomo Campaign for Economic Justice. Do you agree with that? So let me hear you say the Mario Cuomo Campaign for Economic Justice. New York lost a hero this year when we had to say goodbye to Mario Cuomo. His strength, that's right, his spirit is still here. His strength, his vision, his passion, and his unwavering moral compass continue to guide us, each and every one, every day. Yes. Mario Cuomo was right to be proud of the tremendous job his son has done for this state. And something tells me that if he were here today, he would be even more proud. The fight for justice is never easy. But we have a leader in Andrew Cuomo who will stand with us until this work is done. So I just want to know, brothers and sisters, are you willing to join that fight? That was kind of a half-assed response, if you ask me. I'm sorry. People who know me know at least one cuss word is going to come out sooner or later. So I'll ask you one more time. Are you willing to join me? Are you willing to be a part of this fight? Si se puede. Yep. So, unlike an idiot that is running for president of the United States, whose name rhymes with chump, we believe that diversity is proud. And so we are happy to say, yes, we can, and si se puede. Now it is my pleasure to introduce someone who helped make this historic increase for fast food workers possible. Please join me in welcoming one of the 3 members of the Governor's Fast Food Wage Board, the chairman and founder of the GILT Group, Mr. Kevin Ryan.
Thank you, George. I'm making a note to myself to not follow George in speeches. It's a bad move. But really happy to be here. I was very honored to serve on Governor Cuomo's wage board over the last 3 months. There were 3 members of the board. Byron Brown, the mayor of Buffalo, was the chairman. Mike Fishman, the secretary-treasurer of the Service Employees International Union. And then myself as the business representative. So we spent the last 3 months having public hearings. We listened to literally hundreds of stories. Anyone who wanted to come and present their point of view, whether it was a worker at McDonald's or Burger King, an economist, a think tank, a member of management of a larger company impacted by this. We wanted to hear all perspectives. Everyone was welcome. We also had thousands of papers submitted. So we all spent many, many hours reading all of the academic work that was done over the past 20 years on wage increases, minimum wage, what is the impact, because we wanted to do the right thing. We were tasked really with something very simple, which was in New York's labor law, whether the minimum wage for fast food workers is sufficient to provide adequate maintenance and protect one's health. And after consideration, we came to the conclusion that there is just no denying the fact that raising the minimum wage for fast food workers is the just and fair thing to do. But we also determined that it is an important and necessary thing for businesses as well. We were very conscious of the fact that we need businesses to succeed. If we don't have successful businesses, we don't have jobs. We need them to be successful, to create, to make money, to create more jobs, to employ more people in New York State. So we wanted to balance those things. Any good business will tell you that to have a workforce that's fairly paid and able to support their families will make them more productive, there'll be less turnover, and it helps those companies succeed. A higher minimum wage also means that workers are able to lift themselves out of poverty, which has a positive impact on the economy, on the government, and also has a positive impact on the next generation. Kids growing up today with parents who don't make enough money are at a disadvantage, and we need to think about that next generation as well. But unfortunately right now, there's an over-reliance on government assistance. Businesses don't pay workers enough. They're forced to rely on public assistance for basic things like rent, food, clothing. I don't think that most taxpayers realize that they are often subsidizing profitable businesses because those workers are not paid enough. And it's a significant cost to the New York economy. When workers are paid fairly, paid what they deserve, they're able to live off their own wages and invest back into the economy because the dollars they make, they spend in the economy. That creates more jobs. Some critics have claimed that this increase will only help teenagers in part-time jobs. That may have been true 40 years ago, but that's not true today. This is a vital, predominantly adult workforce that has struggled in the grips of poverty. More than 70% of fast food workers are over the age of 20. 73% are women, and 25% are raising a child. 2/3 are the primary wage earner. So we need to think about our entire constituency. So when we looked at this issue objectively, focused on the facts, focused on the academic research that's been done in the last 20 years, and tried to make the right decision, the answer is clear. We needed to raise the minimum wage. This is a change that will make our economy stronger, will save taxpayer dollars in the long run, will improve the lives of millions of workers, and will still balance that with having a very successful and profitable set of businesses in this economy. So we feel great about the outcome. With that, let me now introduce the Mary Kay Henry, who is the International President of the SEIU. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you so much. I know that the people in this room thank you for the incredible service that you brought to the Wage Board in listening to hundreds of fast food workers' stories and then thinking about what it will mean to the New York economy to make this recommendation. But I agree with my brother George Gresham. Today we are here to celebrate the incredible courage of your governor, Andrew Cuomo, in answering the call of fast food workers. And I'm so proud that a leader of our nation, the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, has joined us to answer that call. But we know, brothers and sisters, that the courage and guts of 200 New York fast food workers who had the bodacious idea to strike their stores in November of 2012 are the real heroes of today. And I'm reminded of one story of a Brooklyn KFC worker, Alvin Major, who I met, who's here with us today. He struck 12 times before this wage board recommendation that the governor is accepting today. He has children and a wife who is being treated for cancer. And the way that he stitched together caring for his family was through 3 jobs, totaling 80 to sometimes 100 hours a week. And what this decision today will mean to people like Alvin and the 180,000 fast food workers in New York is going to catalyze the hopes and dreams of 64 million workers across this country who deserve better. And so not only is Governor Cuomo answering the call of workers in this state, Governor Cuomo is challenging the rest of the nation to have governors in every state answer the call of service and care workers in this economy who are doing their very best to serve their customers or care for elders and the people with disability or care for children. And all that work deserves the value that is being assigned to fast food work today in New York. And that's why I'm so proud to stand today in honoring your governor, Andrew Cuomo, and joining with George in suggesting that we can honor the legacy of your former mayor, Mario Cuomo, because not only is New York going to raise wages, New York is going to challenge the rest of the nation to deal with the grossest inequality in our generation once and for all. And I know our union, SEIU, and the rest of the labor movement here is prepared to reach out our hands to those 64 million workers and do the same chant that the New York fast food workers taught us that I want you to say with me today. I believe that we can win. I believe that we can win. I believe that we can win. Thank you very much, Governor. And to the man, a government official who has the guts to agree that we can win as working people, please join me in welcoming and applauding your governor, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Is labor in the house today? Are there working men in the house today? Are there working women in the house today? First, to Mary Kay Henry and SEIU, who had the vision. It starts with vision. And they had the vision to organize workers all across this country 3 years ago to make the simple point that everyone deserves fair pay. We would not be here today without Mary Kay Henry and SEIU and their leadership. And let's give them a round of applause. To George Gresham. George Gresham is my political godfather. Why, you thought godfathers had to be Italian? No, they don't have to be Italian. 1199, and George got me started when I was running for Attorney General. They've been with me ever since. They're a force for social action in this state, unparalleled. Let's hear it for George Gresham in 1199. To Kevin Ryan, who is an extraordinary businessman. He's a great success as a businessman, but even better, he's a great, great corporate citizen to this city and this state, and we thank him for his service and his leadership, and we wish we had more like him. Kevin Ryan. To my colleagues in government, to all my colleagues in the New York State Assembly who are here, led by Speaker Carl Hastie, who said today he pledges his support to this initiative, and he's going to organize all across the state to make this happen statewide. Thank you, Speaker Carl Hastie. To the New York City Council, to the other unions that are here, the other union leaders who are here, and to our special guest, because we do have a special guest. And it seems, hold on, it seems like whenever this special guest comes to New York, there is good news. Doesn't it seem like that? He is like a New York Santa Claus. That's what it's like. Just without the red jacket and the beard and the belly and the nose. Otherwise, he's just like Santa Claus, and whenever he comes, he brings good news. He's been a great friend to this state. We were pushing to get the LaGuardia Airport project approved federally, and he and his team were fantastic getting that approved. Let's give them a round of applause for that. He is here today because he is all about this country's working families. He understands their needs intellectually, and he feels their plight emotionally. And he has been their hero and their champion from day one, and he always will be. Give a New York welcome to Vice President Joe Biden. Today, my friends, is about the hard truth. And the hard truth is that this nation has serious problems that we have to deal with. The truth is that we've had a Congress in Washington which has worked overtime to stymie the president and the vice president in every way that they could. And our nation learned the hard way that in gridlock, everybody loses. Because when this nation doesn't move forward, everyone loses, and that's exactly what they did. And this Congress played their politics at the expense of the people of this country. And we paid the price. New York, we chose a different path. We rejected the extremists, we rejected the zealots, we came together to make the progress that we could make. In New York, we believe it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. But this nation's problems haven't gotten better. In many ways, they've gotten worse. My father, late Governor Mario Cuomo, who we lost this year on my inauguration day this year, spoke to these issues at the Democratic Convention in 1984. And this is part of what he said at that convention. There's another part to the shining city, the part where some people can't pay their mortgages and most young people can't afford one, where students can't afford the education they need and middle-class parents watch the dreams they hold for their children evaporate. In this part of the city, there are more poor than ever before. Even worse, there are elderly people who tremble in the basements of the houses there. And there are people who sleep in the city streets, in the gutter, where the glitter doesn't shine. There are ghettos where thousands of young people without a job or an education give their lives away to drug dealers every day. There is despair in the faces that too many of us don't see, in the faces and places that too many of us don't visit in this shining city. My father's words spoke the truth then, and they speak the truth now, today. The truth is that it's wrong when a society gets so desensitized that people are quicker to bend over and pick up an aluminum can in the name of recycling than bending over to help a homeless person in the name of humanity. The truth is, it is wrong to send a child to a failing school that you know has been failing for decades, when you know that that child's going to be left behind in the first grade and probably never catch up. The truth is, it's wrong to have an economy where the rich get richer while the poor get poorer, where the American dream of mobility and opportunity has become more of a cruel myth. An economy that polarizes and isolates. An economy of the lucky and the left out, the haves and the have-nots. An economy where if you are born poor, you will probably die poor. That is not the American way. The truth is simple. A minimum wage of $8.75 is not a minimum wage in the state of New York at all. FDR, listen to this, FDR said when he started the minimum wage, that the minimum wage is, I quote, a living wage. I mean more than a fair subsistence. I mean the wages of a decent living. That's the definition of minimum wage. And my friends, Kevin Ryan was exactly right. It is simple math. You cannot support a family on $18,000 a year in New York State, not to mention having a decent living. For a modest means, the typical cost of housing is $11,000. The typical cost of food is $9,000. The typical cost of clothing is $6,000. $18,000 just doesn't cover it. A study was released just this week that showed there is not a single neighborhood in New York City that is affordable to someone earning the minimum wage. So several months ago, we impaneled a wage board to study the minimum wage of fast food workers. Kevin Ryan, Mike Fishman, Mayor Byron Brown served on that wage board, and they recommended a wage of $15 an hour. That recommendation went to New York State Commissioner of Labor Mario Mussolino, and I am pleased to announce today that the State of New York's Labor Department has accepted the wage board recommendation in full, and 150,000 fast food workers will see their wages rise to $15 an hour. Now, thank you. Now, this is a great step forward, Mr. Vice President. But this is New York. And New York doesn't believe in just taking one step forward. In New York, we take one step, and then we take another step, and then we take another step, and soon we're walking, and soon we're running. And today we're putting our steps together to form a march towards economic justice, a march that says if you work full time, you shouldn't have to choose between paying the rent and buying food. A march that says if you work full time, you should not live a life in poverty, period. So, Mr. Vice President, today I announce I'm going to propose to the New York State Legislature not just $15 for fast food workers, because if fast food workers deserve $15 an hour, construction workers deserve $15 an hour, and home health care aides deserve $15 an hour, and taxi cab drivers deserve $15 an hour. And every working man and woman in the state of New York deserves $15 an hour as a minimum wage, and we're not going to stop until we get it done. Si se puede. Now, we will phase in the wage so businesses can plan accordingly. We have heard and we reject the political argument that has been made that raising the minimum wage will cost jobs. We believe the exact opposite. We believe raising the minimum wage is actually going to spur the economy, because the families that get that money are going to spend that money. And we care about growing jobs in the state of New York, because we're also pleased to announce that today we have more private sector jobs in the state of New York than any other time in the history of the state of New York. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour will bring fairness to 2.2 million working New Yorkers. $15 an hour will be the highest statewide rate in the nation and will herald a new economic contract with America, and it's about time. Mr. Vice President, I know that you love all 50 states. We love all 50 states too. But we believe New York is just a little special. And we believe New York is the progressive capital of this nation. We believe that New York is the state of possibility. We say it doesn't have to be this way, that we can be better. We say the greatest feast has the most people at the table. New York says don't listen to the small-minded, don't listen to the naysayers, don't listen to the fear-mongers. We can be better. My father's words are not just a dream. we can make those words a reality. We can turn those words into action. We can demonstrate progress. Government can be competent and effective. Government can deliver. We can build housing. We can build airports. Right. We can help the homeless. We can make this place a better place. We can overcome the skeptics by demonstrating the success of government. My friends, let us commit today to go forward from this place, energized, unified, and committed to bringing our crusade to every corner of the state of New York, our crusade for economic justice. And let's show this nation how good we can be and how high we can reach. And let's build my father's shining city. A city where the bright sunlight of opportunity shines on all those who have been left in the shadows for too long. That's New York at its best. It's who we are. It's what we do. Let New York once again show this nation the way forward. Thank you and God bless you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to join me in a real New York welcome. And you know what I mean by a real New York welcome. Yes. To a man who could be a New Yorker. He is that strong. He is that courageous. He is that bold. He is that progressive. He's that much of a leader. He's here with us today. He wants to show the way forward. He's not going back, he's going forward. And he says we're going forward together. He represents the working families of this nation. Let's give a big New York welcome to Vice President Joseph Biden. Hello, New York. Governor, I think New York is special, but I want to tell you, you got the best governor in the whole darn country. You know the old expression, if I'm in a foxhole, I know who I want next to me. I want next to me somebody who knows, is elected, knows how to pronounce the word union. Because he knows, and I know, and you know. You're the ones that built the middle class. Not a joke. Not a joke. You know, Mary Kay, the SEIU has been leading for a long time, and George, in hearing you talk about your mom, the governor and I leaned over to one another almost simultaneously. And I want to say to all the home care workers and all of those of you who work with hospice and all those of you who are nurses, the whole cadre of you. We leaned over when you were talking about your mom, George, and we said, we know your mom. I never met your mom, but we know your mom. Yes. My dad, I had the pleasure and the honor of having him in his last 6 months of his life living with me. I got to kiss him good morning every morning and kiss him good night every night. My mother, I had her with me after that for 4 years, a similar honor. And there wasn't a time toward the end when I'd walk in and there wouldn't be somebody doing something special for my mom. There was somebody who, in most cases, didn't have the same opportunity I had or you had. And
You know, the thing that a lot of folks don't get about us all is that it's a simple proposition where I come from. It matters how you treat other people. It's not really complicated. No, it's really not complicated. And, you know, being a guy who spent 7 months in the hospital with a couple aneurysms and a few other little things, I just want you to know you're all good. But if there's any angels in heaven, they're all nurses. They're all nurses. Male and female. But I want to start off by saying, guys like me, we owe you. We owe you for everything we have. Let me begin by just say that my thoughts and prayers are with Casey Gabay, and his entire family. Your assistant who, as I understand, Governor, came out of the projects, went to Harvard, never forgot where he came from, and was victimized by getting caught in a crossfire between, apparently, as I understand it, two rival gangs at a parade going back home to celebrate the people that raised him and where he's from. It's a tragedy. I want you to know that, and his family to know, we're all thinking of him. You know, I came here for two reasons. First, Gov, to thank you. To thank you for being the man of principle you are, never being afraid to say what you believe and act on it. For by raising the minimum wage for food workers in New York, you're not just doing it in New York. You're going to make every single governor in every state in America look at themselves. No, I mean it. It's going to have a profound impact. You're leading the way for the country. And, Governor, you're doing right by your dad by naming this effort in honor of him. He was a good man. I told your mom, and I've told you and your brothers, I told your family. You know, there's not many people that you look at and you say, at least I haven't, look at and you say, you know, that man, that woman's better than me. Your dad, of all the people I've worked with in public life, I look at and I said at the time, I wish I had what he had. Because of all the extraordinary things he did, the one thing he never, ever did, he never veered from his North Star. He knew exactly why he was in this business. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And he never, ever, 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 ever forgot where he came from. He always had an absolute belief that ordinary people can do extraordinary things just given a half a chance. Just given a half a chance. In this last presidential campaign where Barack and I were campaigning, the only thing that really bothered me about the opposition was there was this almost I'm not even sure they're aware of it, this notion that somehow ordinary folks just were, they just didn't have the capacity to do what they could do. You know, folks, this country was built by ordinary folks like my grandparents and my parents doing extraordinary things. And secondly, I'm here to put this in a larger context. Over the last 6.5 years, our economy has gone from crisis to recovery, and we're now, as the governor and I have talked about many times, on the cusp of a real resurgence. We're better positioned than any nation in the world to lead the world economy in the 21st century. We've created 13.1 million private sector jobs over the last 66 straight months, the longest in history. Unemployment's down to 5.1%. It was over 10% when we got elected. But there's one big missing piece of this. The last piece Barack and I are determined to put in place before we leave. To make this resurgence permanent, we need to address the single biggest issue facing not just individuals, but our entire economy. And that's stagnant wages. You know, I recently met a guy who is a really close friend of mine, happens to be the president of the AFL-CIO, Rich Trumka. He and I were having lunch together. And he said something that I think is really basic. He turned and said, Joe, I'm for anything that raises wages in America. And so am I. Because anyone working 40 hours a week should have a shot at a decent life. The governor said it better than I can. Look, folks, look. There used to be, I want to be serious with you for a second, there used to be a basic bargain in America. It's a bargain that Republicans used to sign on to too, Democrats and Republicans. And that was, if you contributed to the profitability of the enterprise you were involved with, you got to share in the benefits. You got to share in the profits. If you worked hard, you played by the rules, you get to share in the nation's prosperity. But over the last 20 to 30 years, that bargain has been broken through fiscal policy, regulatory policy, tax policy, and corporate policies that valued companies and shareholders over their workers and their families. Consider that at the end of World War II, all the way up to the 70s, productivity, the stuff you make happen, productivity in America moved up, and every time it did, wages moved up. In large part because close to 30% of the workforce then was union. But here's what happened. But since the 70s, an interesting thing has happened. Productivity has gone up 74%. In other words, you're working 74% more efficiently than any time before. But guess what happened? Wages for median income folks grew only 9%. That hadn't happened before. Since '79, wages for the top 1% of America have grown 140%. For the bottom 90%, they've grown 15%. You know, back when Reagan was president, CEOs made 20 to 25% more than their average worker. Today, it's over 300 times what the average worker. What happened here? No, I mean it sincerely. Think about it. What happened? While our economy is improving, more and more folks are finding jobs, middle-class wages are still stagnant, and the working poor are living in poverty. That's right. So, Governor, I applaud you for stepping up with a smart, reasonable plan that recognizes what you and your board have done. This isn't just I'm going to go out and say 15 sounds good. You not only looked at not only the need, but you looked at what was possible, what would have the benefit for workers, but also benefit the economy. And so you're phasing this in the state of New York. Different parts of the state have different capacities, but you're all going to end up at $15 an hour. $15 minimum wage, quicker in New York, a high-cost wage city, as you phase it into the rest of the country. Look, when the minimum wage becomes $15 an hour, more than 135,000, as we mentioned, fast food workers in New York State see a raise. But you know what the total of that raise is? The governor knows. It's $1.8 billion. And here's what happens. Here's what happens. It not only means the difference between living in poverty and having a chance, all that $1.8 million gets spent because you have to spend it to keep up. It's not like giving a $1.8 billion tax to the wealthy. They put it in a bank account. They don't spend it. You spend it. And guess what? Guess what? It starts a virtuous cycle because you create more jobs when you do that. The middle class do better and the wealthy get wealthier. It's reasonable. It's rational. It's the right thing to do, and the federal minimum wage needs to be raised. It's been 10 years since Congress has increased it. 10 years. People are further behind today than they were 10 years ago. So we're supporting a $12 minimum wage for the entire country. $12 an hour. And let me tell you what that means. Raising it just to $12 nationally means 35 million people, many who are on the edge or in poverty, will have a chance. And where cities and states decide higher wages like you've done here, guess what happens? You raise everybody up. You raise everybody up. I was recently in Los Angeles with a friend of yours, Mayor Garcetti. They raised the minimum wage in Los Angeles, not the whole state in Los Angeles, to $15 an hour, putting enormous pressure now on the entire state. I'm here in New York because once again you're governor and you are leading the way. You know, the governor, you get like I do, that this is about starting a virtuous cycle. The first and most important thing is treating people decently. But guess what happens when we treat people decently? Everything goes up. For example, the only study I can cite, Governor, because there's not one on $15 an hour nationally, raising the minimum wage just to $12 an hour raises earnings for low and moderate income workers by $80 billion over 5 years. That's not a statistic. It's money folks will spend right back in the economy, food, clothing, housing, gasoline. That, in contrast, to giving another $1 billion cut in taxes for the wealthy, is going to go in and stimulate the economy. But the wealthy don't spend their tax cuts. Secondly, studies show if we increase the minimum wage, it raises income across the board. So here's the deal. We know that boosting minimum wage has a rippling effect on the entire wage scale, benefiting workers with wages up to 50% higher than minimum wage. So you get a minimum wage working at one of the fast food outlets, guess what? The manager's salary goes up. Everybody's salary goes up. The Chicago Fed says that raising the minimum wage, this is just to $9 an hour, increases what we call the gross domestic product, raising the standard of America by almost a half a percentage point. That's billions and billions of dollars. Imagine what it is at 12. Imagine what it is at 15. And folks, the third part is half minimum wage workers are women. Women make up more than 70% of all workers in tip jobs like restaurant servers. These are women who are the primary bread earners in their family. Giving them a raise means they can afford more decent housing, transportation to get back and forth to work, and maybe a little bit more help on their child care, which we want to, by the way, increase the tax credit 3 times what it is now, but that's a different story. At $12 an hour, 18 million children, 1 out of every 4 kids in this country, would see at least one parent get a raise. The fourth thing here is raising wages is good for business, is the point you were making. We're not making this up to try to be nice to business. The governor's right. Without flourishing businesses, we got a real problem. So neither one of us are going to suggest, nor the president going to suggest something that is going to depress business, because in turn it ends up hurting everybody. But here's what happens. You know the biggest cost business has, and I'll yield to the expert, the biggest cost is training workers, replacing workers, not having loyal workers, decreased productivity when they do all this. But here's what happens. When you raise their wages to a decent level where they know you value them. My dad used to say, Joey, it's all about dignity. Dignity. When someone treats you with dignity, you are more inclined to do more for them. So when wages are raised, it generates loyalty to businesses. It increases productivity. It leads to less turnover, less cost. Profits go up for businesses. And Governor, the other thing you're showing is that raising the minimum wage is not the only way to make sure folks get paid for what they earn. You know what I love about this governor? No, I really mean this. I really, really mean this. He understands there's no single silver bullet out there. But he understands that if we just go back to basics, we can fundamentally change the living circumstance of working Americans. For example, infrastructure. Fancy word for roads, bridges, highways, airports, etc. This governor, with the help of the leadership in the legislature, is investing $175 billion in the state of New York over the next 10 years. $113 billion in transportation, $7 billion in energy. You say, Joe, we're here about minimum wage. What the heck are you talking to us about this for? Well, here's the deal, guys. That creates millions of not minimum wage jobs, of high-paying jobs. If infrastructure investments is made, it starts its own virtuous cycle. More people, whether they are working laying concrete or they're the engineers on the job, what happens is they spend more money in everything from the restaurants that waitress works in, to the clothing store your husband or wife works in, to making sure that they buy that new car where your wife or husband sells a car. It generates significant investment. On a federal level, the President and I know that raising the minimum wage isn't the only inequity we have to deal with. You know, on Labor Day, just a few days ago, I announced simultaneously a presidential order. When he was in Boston, I was in Pittsburgh at a Labor Day parade, a new executive order requiring all federal contractors, anybody who has a contract with the federal government, you can do this by executive order, you don't need the Congress, to require them to their employees who have to provide for up to 7 days of paid sick leave over time. Any of you like me, and I have been lucky, you've paid me a good salary. But I was a single parent for 5 years after my wife and daughter were killed, raising 2 boys. I had enormous help. I had my mother, my father, and my sister who actually moved in with me, she and her husband. But you know what? It's really hard when you don't have the time to take off, when your child is sick, or when your parent is sick. And if you do, not in my case, but in the case of the vast majority of people in America, they lose a paycheck. They can't afford to lose a paycheck. This is going to give 300,000 more workers right now, access to sick leave for the first time, helping them care. Without risk that they lose their job or lose a paycheck. We're also taking action. It's 1,000 little things that add up to a decent life. We're also taking action, which we've been pushing for a long time. We changed the rules at the Department of Labor. You can no longer not pay overtime to your workers by falsely categorizing them as management. Because that's what a lot of businesses do. You're making 20 grand a year, you have no real responsibility, we call you management. You work 30 hours a week overtime, you don't get paid an extra penny. You work an hour overtime, you don't get paid. Well, that's changed. That means there's going to be significantly higher compensation for 5 million workers, increasing their total earnings by $1.5 billion a year. Look, folks, it's a simple proposition. The single most rapid and important thing that we can do to deal with wage inequity and start this virtuous cycle is what the governor did today, raising the minimum wage. The higher it's raised, the more impact it has immediately on the lives of individuals. But we got to rebuild this basic bargain, guys. We got to build this bargain. Because as the governor used the word, it's all about possibilities. You know, I was with the president of China. I've been with him an awful lot because of my responsibilities in foreign policy. And I was having dinner with him in Chengdu in China, traveling through the country with him. And he had an interpreter and I did. He looked at me and he asked me an interesting question. He said, Mr. Vice President, how would you define America? And I said, Mr. President, it's very easy. I can define it in one word: possibilities. Just think about this a second. What distinguishes America from every other country in the world up until now? Because of the possibilities. When my dad had to leave Scranton, Pennsylvania in the early 50s because there were no good jobs, to move down to Wilmington, Delaware, where there was employment and his brother lived. And he left us with my grandpa. And I remember sitting at the end of my bed, I was going into 4th grade, and he said, Joey, Dad's going to have to move. When I get a good job down there and get enough money, we'll get a place, and you and Mom and the kids will come down. It's only 156 miles, Joey. I thought that was like going to the moon. He said, I'll be home as many weekends as I can. But he looked me in the eye and he said this, and I really mean this, my word is abiding. He said, Joey, it's going to be okay. He fully believed it would be okay. Go back to your old neighborhoods. Talk to the people you were raised with. Talk to the people who are raising their children today and ask them, do they think they can look their child in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay? Too many Americans no longer think it's going to be okay. We have one single solitary focus: to continue this fight until every parent can look their kid in the eye and mean what they say. Honey, it's going to be okay. That's what this is about. And folks, it starts with a living wage. I'll conclude by quoting my dad again. We're quoting our dads here. My dad wasn't a national figure, but he was a class guy. And my dad used to say, I don't know how many times my siblings and I heard him say this, ever since we had to move to Wilmington. He said, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about your respect. It's about your place in your community. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this is about. Every single solitary American, particularly those who are willing to go out there and work 40 hours a week, is entitled to be treated with dignity, and that starts with a decent living wage. So go get them. Don't give up. Get this done. Governor, the whole country owes you for this initiative.